Hey, this is Mary Beth Alumbaugh, and this is my critique of Kansas policy, my running project for SPED 756. The policy that I chose was part of the state law in the state of Kansas. This policy is also found on their website, and I am choosing to do my project over the policy KAR 91-40-47, which is a transportation policy for exceptional children enrolled in private schools by their parents. It states that a student with exceptionalities is able to receive transportation services if the child can benefit from or participate in special education and related services. The state law requires the school to provide transportation to and from the public school if the services are being performed at the school site. The connections I plan to make with this law and the IDEA are simple. I plan to discuss the issue with busing children from private schools to public schools and the issue with free and appropriate education and ensuring that the student is in the least restrictive environment. I plan on discussing the time lost due to transporting a child to and from a public school. And I have interviewed a special education teacher at my current school. I work at a private school, and I also interviewed the principal at the private school to talk to them about busing children as well as transportation services. Special education teacher went on to talk about how the scheduling would be difficult because of what the student would miss while they were gone or out of the building. They talked about how services can depend on the severity of the needs that the student needs. It can either go from 15 minutes to 30 minutes to an hour of services, and that's all accruing with the time for transportation. So a child can be gone from the private school setting for an hour for 15 minutes of service, up to 3 hours, depending on the amount of services time that they need. The principal talked about how not all private schools are fortunate enough to have special education, but thankfully at my school, we have had special education here for the past 20 years. And that is only because of the district that we live in, and they are the district that our school is in. And they have gladly given us a special education teacher as well as funds for 2 paras to work here. There is one private school in the Wichita Catholic Diocese that has their own funded special education program. And that is only because its parishioners give a lot of money to be able to fund that SPED program. But a lot of the times private schools are not fortunate enough to have that special education because they do not have the stewardship or the funds to go with that. Some critiques that I am going to make have to deal with the least restrictive environment, as well as free appropriate education. With the least restrictive environment, the IDEA requires that students with disabilities are to be educated in the least restrictive environment and with their non-disabled peers to the maximum extent appropriate. If a student is having to be bused from a private school to a public school for special education services, they are being taken out of their school of choice or their school that they're comfortable in to go to a different school, which is not as inclusive. An inclusive education is not just the student going to be a part of a general education classroom. Inclusive is that they feel comfortable in the classroom community. So if that is the case, if they are looking at that model of both ways of inclusiveness, this would be against all inclusive models because the student is being taken out of their normal, least restrictive environment to a more restricted placement outside of the school that they are at. Is it free appropriate education? If the free appropriate education is determined by the IEP team. In the IEP team, there are multiple people that work on the IEP team, but the parents are a key part of this. If the parents choose to prefer their schooling at private schools. Is this really considered FAPE, free appropriate education, if the parent chooses based off their free exercise of religion or their autonomy to control their child's upbringing? Is it really considered FAPE if the child has to be taken out of their school of choice and gone to a public school? But it is not an option, of course, for the public schools to deny the services of people of the kids that go to private schools. Some remedies for this issue would be to have a model of inclusive practices. So working on either doing the SWIFT model or MTSS, where all students in the school can benefit from different ways of teaching, and also being able to meet all of the students' needs using those two services. Correct placement is also very important, so we are not mislabeling students that do not need services, or the students that need services are not being put into placement either. So that goes both ways. Another important part of a remedy for this issue would be to use the NICE teachers or the NICE teachers that are the NICE teachers are a network of inclusive Catholic educators, and NICE provides materials and supports to schools that are moving towards an inclusive environment. So this would be a really good idea for our Catholic schools in the Wichita School Diocese to use, so that we are able to move to that inclusive environment and model of those inclusive practices. And the last but not least would be using a voucher program. And since no tuition is being paid at Wichita Catholic schools, because it is all stewardship based, the taxes paid to districts or to create this voucher program for students to attend a school of choice based off the district that they live in. Now, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act provides significant federal funding for the special education efforts of states that agree to provide all children with disabilities a free and appropriate public education. I think that regardless of the fact that parents have a free choice and they are an integral part of the IEP team, it should not matter, and they should be able to have services to the students that need services at private schools or public schools or independent schools or homeschooling, wherever the parent decides that they want their student to be educated in. And that is it. Thank you. And here are my references. And thank you for watching.